Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com.
It's game time right here at Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. I am Kyle Elfrink. He is Ray Flowers, and that is a version of Ray Flowers you don't normally see, a version celebrating the NFL and reminding you how great and powerful the league is, and reminding you that we are just, 3 days away from the big game in Las Vegas. Look at you, Ray. You're jumping on board the Roger Goodell train.
Trying, Kyle. You know, we have the rule here where I have to have a new background photo every day, and trying to keep that dream alive, that streak alive. And I'm only going to have 2 more football shots for months. I got my fingers crossed I don't have to have something crazy, you know, in August or April or something like that. So I'm playing the role today, Kyle. Playing the role.
Did you notice earlier in the week, Roger Goodell had his Super Bowl press conference that he does every year, his like State of the Union, if you will, which always has been on the Friday before the game. And then I think like with COVID, they moved it like a Thursday or so. They kind of switched it up a bit with COVID. Ray, they've now moved it to a Monday, which here's the reason why. It's because none of the media is there yet. It's so he doesn't have to face questions from a national contest. The only media there is like the beat writers and columnists for the teams. Like they arrive early for like San Francisco and Kansas City.
Right.
And then I also think they didn't even tell the NFL media that this was going to be on a Monday until like last Thursday or Wednesday after travel plans had already been made and arranged. So he's an evil man, that Roger Goodell, avoiding the heat of the kitchen, if you will.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember last year when we went down and covered the Super Bowl for Sirius. We were down in Arizona. We were, Jeff, Mans, Sondernello, and Phil Backer and myself. I think we did Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Like you're saying, like maybe it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but we certainly weren't there on Monday. And that's, I think, pretty standard. People come in midweek for the game, and maybe we're creating a conspiracy theory that doesn't exist, but I tend to agree with what you just said there.
No, he also held it in the Raiders locker room. It used to be in a giant, massive meeting hall. No, he's avoiding the questions, right? That's what he's doing. It's his prerogative. He's the boss. I guess he gets to do that. We will not avoid any questions. If you've got questions today or any day here on Fantasy Sports Daily, by all means, shoot them our way. Whether you're on the YouTube page, X, Facebook, however you're consuming us, we are always willing to answer any questions, comments that you got that pertain to what we're talking about. Send them our direction. In terms of what we have for today, well, yes, indeed, it is Super Bowl 58. It is getting closer. We are starting to get a little excited, I guess, for this big game. We will continue our breakdown of some of the matchups to follow. Today, we'll talk about Brock Purdy against the Kansas City pass rush. Could be a big topic of discussion coming out of that game if one side or the other kind of handles the pressure. We'll hit some over-unders on pass catchers. This is it's a fun couple of teams, Ray, because you've got Kelsey, who's the man on Kansas City. And then after that, Rashee Rice is maybe good for 4 or 5 catches. And then it's a wild, wild west, which for a wagerer makes it kind of fun. Who's going to be the third guy to maybe emerge. On the San Francisco side, Ray, it's like there's really no true Kelsey. You have like 4 guys who could lead this team in receptions. You've got Samuel, you've got Ayuk, you've got McCaffrey, you've got Kittle. So they're 2 different teams. Obviously, they're both great offenses, but 2 different teams that have different approaches when throwing the football.
Yeah, and it'll be fascinating to see how this goes, because in theory, if your defense is good enough and you scheme well enough, you should be able to have more success against the team that's got the sharper point, right? Because you only have to focus technically on a couple of guys, whereas the Niners do present more options, you would think, for the Chiefs to handle. But that's a big one here. People trying to figure, especially the prop market and everything, are we going over to the 70 yards with Kelsey? Are we going over the 6.5 catches with Kelsey? Is he going to have some huge game? Is he going to have a moderate game? Who on the Niners is going to pop, right? We're going to get 18-plus touches for Christian McCaffrey. Then what happens? We'll get into it.
Yeah, and probably one of those 4 guys on San Francisco, who are all big names, will come up short. Very rarely do you have all 4 guys, hitting 4 or 5 catches a game. And when you look at the over-unders, that's kind of what you're dealing with. So we'll talk about that. Kansas City may actually get a pass catcher returning for this week. I don't know if it's one that will matter, but we will tell you about it coming up. And we'll get into the world of baseball. Second base is the topic that we are covering today. Positional versatility is a true hallmark of this position. We will spotlight a few guys who are pretty good players, but also give you a lot of options as to where to use them. Second base has loads of those guys in the top 20, top 25. So we'll profile a few of those. We'll talk ABA. Yesterday when we were discussing SWIP, Ray kind of referenced that ABA was up next on the docket. So we'll hit that category. Vlad Jr. is a winner, at least for a day. Gary Sanchez is a winner, at least for a day. And Pete Alonso may not be a winner for a while. We'll get to all of that coming up over the next hour. We were set to talk some fantasy Premier League with Ani Sridhar. You see that at the bottom, but conflicts and schedules. And Ani's doing a lot of stuff with the Super Bowl, Sirius XM, and all that. So we'll bail on Ani today. Chance that we get him tomorrow on the show. So if you're looking for FPL, come back on Friday. Speaking of coming back, Ray, we are always welcoming people back to Fantasy Guru. We are always welcoming people for the first time to Fantasy Guru. And as always, there are easy avenues to getting in with fantasyguru.com, right?
There are. Obviously, youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork to watch the show. We're on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. If you want to listen to this show, we also post the show, Fantasy Sports Daily, at fantasyguru.com. All that's free. Now, if you want to get more in depth, if you want to start reading articles, get access to the Discord, start having some fun in there with the chat rooms and all that, then you want to use the promo code FSD20. That's FSD20. Fantasy Sport Daily. That gets you a 20% discount on all the products, whether you want to get involved with the EPL, if you want to get involved with racing, if you want to get involved with NBA, and if you want to get involved with baseball. So it's promo code FSD20. Use that right now. You can get that discount on the early bird pricing for baseball that gets you the entire season, all the way to the World Series for $40. So that's available right now. And then for $19.99, you also have the football package right now. It's the all-in football package that gets you everything this week. It gets you seasonal football, DFS football, the Super Bowl betting guide, off-season franchise mode as we kind of look toward the draft itself. That's available as well. And Little Birdie told me there might even be a little bit of a discount coming on the old basketball product. So stay tuned for that over at fantasyguru.com.
Okay, so things are happening, no doubt, as we get ready for this Super Bowl weekend. And get ready, believe it or not, what pitchers and catchers, Ray, is it like 10 days?
Yeah,
probably around.
Yeah.
So we're getting closer, and everybody's a little different with that date, but exciting times, even though it's a little slow right now. Still plenty of things to prep for. We are prepping for the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, 6:30, that kickoff, by the way, if you did not know. CBS will have the broadcast. Trying to think any other things that are important. Tony Romo will be there.
That's important.
Yeah, that's important. I guess it's important. I can't stand Tony Romo, but that's for another day. Taylor Swift will be there.
Mm-hmm.
She got a new record coming out, by the way. I don't know if a record. I shouldn't say it. She's got a new set of songs coming out.
You like the record, though. That's good.
Yeah. She got a new record. Usher will be there for halftime. Is any of this exciting to you, Ray? Any of it?
No, I mean, I think I'm like most people that I have the Super Bowl show on and I'm kind of, but no. I mean, it's, the halftime stuff.
Now, you'll sit and watch the Usher. You're not one of those people who walks out of the room and
out
for it.
Yeah, I'll sit around, or if I walk into the kitchen, I'll turn the stereo up so we can hear it, that kind of thing. I'll probably watch it, but it's not must-see TV for me.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I'm sure there'll be a lot of awesome dance moves. He's a good dancer. I know that. Which I've always thought, Ray, he's got to be in his 40s, I'm guessing, right, Usher? Maybe upper 30s, I would think. Yeah, that's always the struggle as you age in this profession, the pop market. How old is he?
He's 45.
Yeah, so he's my age. Ray, if I was moving around like Usher's going to move around on Sunday, woo, A, it would be ugly as hell, and B, we'd be going to the doctor on Sunday night.
Oh, he's an elite athlete, Kyle. Elite performer. I remember him doing Singing in the Rain after Gene Kelly, and like you said, so yeah, we'll see what he has to do, but he's not going to stand there and yell into a microphone the whole time.
Yeah, he's gonna be gassed at the end of 12, 15 minutes, however long it runs. He'll be sweating up a storm there. in Vegas. As for the game, which we can give you a little more insight on, each and every day this week, we've been kind of spotlighting a certain portion of the game. Yesterday, we talked about kind of this 49ers defense and kind of the pressure of getting to Patrick Mahomes and trying to get those sacks and kind of the matchup with the O-line, the San Francisco front four against that Kansas City O-line. Today, Ray will flip it to the Kansas City defense versus the San Francisco offense when Brock Purdy is passing. And I thought this was worth touching on today because both these teams, well, I should say one team likes to do something that might play into the hands of the other team. Kansas City's defense under D coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, which anytime as a St. Louis person, when I say Steve Spagnuolo, you almost have to chuckle because Steve was a disaster here in St. Louis. I think, Ray, I think he went 6-42 in his 3 years.
Let me look that up as you're talking.
They had a 3-year run. I don't know if Spags was there for the whole 3-year run, but it was like 6-42. It was really, really dreadful. And of course, Spagnuolo had that great run as a D coordinator with the Giants. They won that Super Bowl against New England. He immediately got the job in St. Louis, failed and fell on his face. And now, Ray, he's rebounding. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo is one of those guys, Ray, who has rediscovered his ability as a coordinator. He will never get another NFL head coaching job. It was so bad. It was so awful. But he'll always have a D coordinator job, especially with what he's done with this Kansas City defense, Ray, has been pretty impressive over the last 3 or 4 years.
Agreed. And, sometimes you get a shot and it doesn't work, but what do you do then, right? Do you cower or do you figure it out? And he's figured it out, and he's got a role. And like you said, he'll be around past Andy Reid, it seems, at this point. He went 7-9 1 year as a head coach, Kyle.
Okay, so maybe it was part of a 3-year run with them.
He did also go 2-14 and 1-15. So 3 victories.
Well, what about
in 2
there must have been was the following year like a 3-13, and so they went like 6-42 or something.
He went 1-15, 7-9, 2-14, which is pretty impossible to be horrid. Horrid. So
okay, I guess that was a little rough on Spag.
He went 10-38, Kyle, with the
10-38. Okay, I was rough. I shorted him 4 wins.
You did.
That's what I did.
So
I am giving him credit for the defense. I will give him credit for that. You gave him credit for rebounding. And it isn't always easy. And like I said, go back 3-4 years ago, this defense was not good in Kansas City. This was a team that had to outscore you. That situation has changed. It's changed a lot. This defense is actually one of the better units in the NFL. And specific to this matchup, Ray, they like to blitz. Kansas City, in terms of blitz numbers, 5th most in terms of blitzing in the NFL. I bring this up, Ray, because Brock Purdy is just about the best quarterback in the entire NFL against the blitz. He is averaging over 10 yards a throw against the blitz, which is notable because you're not supposed to be able to throw it that far down the field when you're getting blitzed. It's supposed to be more like 6 or 7 yards, a quick dump off when you see the blitz. On top of that, Ray, he's got the most touchdown passes of any quarterback against the blitz. I think it's like 16. His QB rating is number 1 of any NFL quarterback against the blitz. And I get why he is blitzed, Ray. I mean, there's still this idea of, can he handle it? He's young. He's not supposed to be a superstar. Teams blitzed him pretty often this year, and he handled it perfectly well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've watched, obviously, we've all watched him play. I've watched a little closer being a Niners fan. And I do think, maybe this isn't fair to him, but I do think a lot of what we're seeing here in these numbers is I'm taking my 5-step drop. Here comes the pressure. Hey, Debo, woo, go, run. Hey, CMC, woo, go run. George Kittle wasn't covered on this play. I'm going to drop the ball. I haven't been, and this sounds crazy for a team in the Super Bowl with a quarterback with these numbers, I just haven't been that impressed. Yeah. And we've seen it in the playoffs. There have been some bad decisions. There have been some bad throws. For the most part, it's worked out. Obviously, they're here. The Niners are. I don't know, and I know this is unfair a little bit, but I don't know how much of those numbers are 100% reflective of him versus just the system and the scheme and the players around him. But at the end of the day, whether it's directly him or not, the numbers are, like you're talking about, are elite. So it will be a huge key because, the Niners want to get everything going this way, get mismatches created with motion and all that.
Mhm.
And if the Chiefs can't get in, right, even with the strength of their defense, they can't get in. How do they stop the Niners? They can slow them down, right? They do have a good defense, but if they don't get, have this third down or the blitz situation go in their favor, Niners are going to, produce some yards and potentially some points.
I'm glad you brought up that idea of, how they like to move guys and get, confuse the defense in effect with 5 different guys running different routes, and they're lined up on the right, on the left, they're moving in motion, all that stuff. There was an awesome article, and, it's paywalled and stuff. A friend of mine sent it to me. It was from the Wall Street Journal. Yes, they do cover sports. And maybe you saw this, Ray, or saw reference to it on Twitter or something, but it was referencing how very much so this San Francisco offense, but really every single offense Kyle Shanahan has run, Atlanta, San Francisco, whatever, is going the opposite of the way the NFL has gone over the last 20 years. And what I mean by that is they come in tight. We've always heard spread the field.
Spread the field, yeah.
That's what everybody in the NFL has been doing, spread the field. That's what the Chiefs do. That's what the Ravens do, everybody. Kyle Shanahan, Ray, has shrunk the field, which is not what we hear in 2024. Everybody wants space, right? Let your athletes get into space and make the plays. But they like to squeeze it down more than any other team in the NFL. And they've always been that under Kyle Shanahan. Like I said, San Francisco, Atlanta, that's what he wants to do. Hell, it's what his dad, Mike Shanahan, did. Now, Mike Shanahan was playing a different era. People did shrink the field. But that is really unique with San Francisco, Ray. And as we talk about a blitz this week, this blitz is going to be seeing more bodies than they're used to. Whether those bodies are blocking or not is kind of beside the point. But there's a lot of things going on because you've got a team on offense that squeezes it, and you've got a team on defense in Kansas City that likes to bring, 6 or 7 dudes on the blitz at a time.
Yeah, think of it. If you can see the screen, right here, we're spreading the field, right? We got guys all over the place. It's my hand as the example, right? And we go. Now think of it like this: you start here, and then you spread, right? Yeah. So then we're getting the movement. And it also changes the angles because if you're wide as an offense, your defenders can get really wide and come in at a sharper angle. If it's straight, now you got to bubble out, right? Because you can't go straight. You're going to run into someone. So, that is something because the Niners, they've got Trent Williams, but their offensive line has taken some hits. They lost guys in free agency this offseason. They dealt with some injuries this year. Their offensive line, has been good, right? And Ted Schuster was talking about this on the Elite Sports Show the other day. He's like, I don't know how they did as well as they did because these pieces don't necessarily work on their own, but together they figured it out. But it's not necessarily an overwhelming strength like it has been at times for them. And it's scheming, it's coaching, it's quarterback play, it's the yards after the catch, it's all these kind of things that, like you said, they've done a really good job of figuring out the right mix for the players they have on their side of the field.
If you're Steve Spagnuolo, do you look at those numbers from Purdy and say, oh, we're going to pull back on the blitz? Again, they do it the 5th most in the NFL. My opinion, Ray, is you still do it. I'm one of those people, you do what you do. It's like Dan Campbell a couple of weeks ago whenever he went for it on 4th down. And you do what you do. I have no problem with Dan Campbell. And people complain, no, you don't do that in the playoffs. You don't do it when it's win or lose or, win or go home kind of things. I have no problem with doing what you do all the time. So if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, Ray, I'm still blitzing this weekend.
Well, we were just talking about it. The Niners do what they do. They figured out what works for them and they do it, right? And stop us. If I'm in agreement with you. You have a good defense on your side of the field. We're going to do what we do, and we're going to impose our will on the opponent. Now, if the first quarter happens and it's 14 points and 172 yards, well, then we got to change things up. But I think that you want to play it. You don't, and that's the fascinating chess part. Like a lot of people look at football and think it's a bunch of big fast guys running into each other, right? That's the chess game that it's not just 1 week of prep, it's 2 weeks of prep. So they've sat there over and over again, the coaches have, and they've looked at film, and they've been struggling with, we think we can do this. We believe we can do this. Should we do this, right? And it's that battle of how do we adjust what we see on film to our group of players? Do we adjust to what we see on film? Do we do what we do and make them adjust to us? I think that chess game is really a fascinating piece, and it always is in the Super Bowl.
And to reference what you noted a few minutes ago, Brock Purdy and sort of living dangerously in the postseason. And Ray, we're all reminded of when has it been bad? When's the one moment it's been really bad for Brock Purdy? It was that game against Baltimore. I mean, it stands out like a sore thumb how awful he was on that Sunday night. 4 interceptions. They didn't move the football at all in the second half. Mistake after mistake. And I can't sit here and say, oh, yeah, all those. I was actually on air doing stuff, so I wasn't watching that game, blow by blow. So I apologize. But of those 4 picks or any of those other passes that might have been picked, I wonder how many came with a Ravens blitz in his face. Like I said, his numbers overall are good. But when you blitz, Ray, you're trying to force quick passes or passes that aren't necessarily thought through well. You're trying to make people speed up their thinking and make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Brock Purdy, to your point, not only the 4 interception game, but even here in the postseason, has been apt to make that mistake, to make that bad throw. That's another reason if I'm Spagnuolo, I'm going with the blitz, because I've got a guy here who on occasion has been known to throw it into tight spots and not make it work. I want to take advantage of that. They probably did the same thing against Josh Allen, a few weeks back. This is a guy who can make a mistake. And when you blitzed against Allen, one fear you always had was, well, the pressure comes, he steps up in the pocket and then beats you with his legs. Right. Not that Purdy can't do that. Right. What do you have, 50 yards against Detroit? He had a pretty good rushing game. But you're not as fearful of Purdy doing that like you were Josh Allen.
Yeah, he's more in the Patrick Mahomes zone. Like, he's athletic and he can move around and he can shift the pocket or run if he needs to. And this is like an overblown storyline, so I'm not trying to belabor a point. But Purdy doesn't have elite arm strength. And how far down the list you want to go with his arm strength is up to you. But like the Josh Allen thing, Josh Allen can stuff a ball into a tight window because he can throw the ball harder than anyone. He can zip it in there. Brock Purdy can't zip it in there. So when you're moving around, the cross-field throws and those kind of things that we've seen Purdy fail to do recently. Like, there's been multiple plays in the playoffs where he's thrown a ball across the field after he's shifted the pocket. I'm like, oh God, whew. Because it's like, you can't be floating balls over the center of the field. If you're going to throw it over the center of the field, you got to zing it. You don't even want to do it, but you got to zing it. And that's just not his game. And so, yeah, the getting the player off, getting the receiver off their route, getting the timing messed up, that's a huge part of a defense. And you don't have to get to the quarterback, right? They don't have to have Chiefs have 6 sacks to win this football game. Mm-hmm. But if they're causing the Niners to be off schedule with the timing, that can do enough to win them a football game.
And this all leads into kind of talking about some of these wagers and over-unders, and pass receptions. And we could look at this 2 ways, Ray. We could say the pass receptions themselves are yardage. I kind of look at this as pass receptions, but again, folks, you can obviously play yardage and play around with these numbers. But Ray, on the San Francisco side, Ayuk, McCaffrey, Samuel, all 3 of them have their over-under set at 4.5. Now, the odds for each is a little different. I mean, like, if you take the over on Deebo Samuel for 4.5, it's -140. I thought that was a little high. I mean, not the 4.5, but the -140. Yeah. That's kind of getting into, oh yeah, there's a certainty of this happening. Right. McCaffrey's -135. Ayuk is +130, Ray.
Yeah.
And if you look at his game by game, he does have some of that where it's like, man, the guy can have 7 or 8 catches, and then for some reason he has just 2. Overall, the season's been very good for Brandon Ayuk, but even getting to like +130 to go over 4.5 catches on the surface, you'd say, hell yeah, let's do it. We'll have to see if Snead, just shuts down a side of the field and do the Niners kind of avoid with certain players. But at +130, I'd be tempting to jump in on that Ayuk over.
I do like it, by the way, looking at DraftKings Sportsbook, how they go down with the odd a little bit. The under 4.5 catches is not 167 for 2/3, it's 166, which is the same for Kittle over the 3.5 catches.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it's tough because, on the other side, on the Niners side, Kyle Shanahan's had 2 weeks too, right? And we want to get the ball deep. I think, and we've said this before, to me, Deebo Samuel's the most important guy on the offense, which is crazy because they have Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's going to get his 17 carries. He's going to get his 4 catches, right? It's just going to happen. It's what Deebo does that really drives this thing. But if you're Kyle Shanahan, the Chiefs understand that. So are we going to try to overly involve Kittle, who's been kind of quiet? He's been off and on here down the stretch. We're going to try to overly involve Ayuk. Is it going to be some craziness? We're going to get Jawan Jennings 5 targets in the game. So I feel uneasy about the Niners going out there and Brock Purdy throwing for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, I struggle a little bit to get to that point, which even looking at these relatively moderate numbers, to your point, Kyle, I don't feel great about him given some of the odds. Oh, did we lose Kyle? Kyle might have frozen. Kyle was so enamored with my discussion about the odds there with the catches, Kyle, that you just froze. Now you're
Yeah,
back.
I had a burp there.
Okay.
Yeah, so 4.5 on all three of those guys, Ayuk, McCaffrey, and Samuel. Kittle's at 3.5. Like, if I forced you, Ray, to take one of those four, do you say, oh, I'll just take Kittle because I only have to get 4 catches? The other guys, you got to get 5, which is not a massive number. But again, from game to game, we've seen one, if not two of these guys fail to get to 5 catches. You know, it's not necessarily there. And I realize you got to play the odds. Like, that 3.5 on Kittle, the over is minus 166. I keep landing on Ayuk, Ray, as my favorite. The over on 4.5 just because of the plus 130 I get.
If I had to bet straight up, I'd go Deebo Samuel. If I had to take the odds, I'd go Ayuk. Because, yeah, I mean, minus 140 to plus 130, it's a big difference. And I'm not the kind of guy like you that's going to go throw, $1,500 on a bet. So if I'm going to throw my $20 on a bet, give me the better odds.
1,500? Is that what you said I'd do?
I said I'm not going to throw 1,500 on a bet.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You can, right?
I could. No, actually, I can't. But others can.
On the Kansas City side, Ray, Rice and Kelsey, they're over under 6.5. It's massive. There's no other guy on the Chiefs that's better. Pacheco's 2.5. But Ray, those are big numbers for Rice and Kelsey, are they not? I mean, I get it and the importance, and we think they're going to throw. But even Rice, like, I'm seeing that 6.5, and I'm kind of turned off by that with Rice. Kelsey over 6.5 rate is minus 160. I think that's a risky bet. I actually like the under for Kelsey of 6.5 and getting plus 120 odds there.
Yeah, when you were gone the other day, we had Justin Fentzman and we talked about the tight ends, and I basically said the same thing. I'm like, look, I think for the Chiefs to win this game, 7-8 catches, 85 yards, a touchdown, like, they really need Kelsey to do that. Do I feel confident that's going to happen? There's always the injury factor too, which I think this is another thing we talked about, Justin and I. Like, even when you're looking at this numbers, like, you see 6.5 and you're thinking, okay, Kelsey, he's setting playoff records. He's the most important piece of their offense. He's definitely come on here down the stretch and into the playoffs. What if he tweaks an ankle and they only plays 52% of the snaps this week or something like that? Or what if a ball goes through his hands? Or what if Mahomes has 2 interceptions? Or what if they turn a ball over? They have a penalty, a problem, on special teams. We all are inclined to go over because it's sexy and fun. But 6.5, meaning you need 7 catches, that even for Travis Kelce, Cal, that is a big number to place a bet on.
Ray, I kind of feel like we're giving them the Amon-Ra St. Brown treatment or Cooper Kupp treatment. And I get it. Kelce, for his career, 6.5 is not silly. And lately, it's not silly. But, Ray, there was a whole gap this entire season where that would have been stupid. Really. And I'm much more apt, again, with 2 weeks off and a team knowing, hey, if we stop Travis Kelce, we have a great shot of winning this game. Like, a really good shot of winning this game. So I like the under a lot more there. And with Rice, I'm a little hesitant to say the guy's good for 7 catches in the Super Bowl. As Kelce has picked up, Rice has pulled back just a bit. I mean, he's still making catches, but the yardage isn't necessarily there. So I don't like either of those overs with Rice or Kelce. Yeah,
Warner and Greenlaw are good linebackers too. And so I think that might, Kelsey's good at finding the space and all that, but that's a challenge. And I think the problem with fully going in on Rice is not that we haven't seen him in the second half emerge as their top option, but isn't this Noah Gray catches the touchdown, or Justin Watson's in there, or Marcus Valdez? Like, this is Andy Reid's, he's putting something together, and that just, again, makes me a little bit nervous. Not that Rice is going to disappear, but 7 catches, it's a big number.
This game, and I don't even know what the odds are, maybe like Noah Gray first touchdown of the game. I mean, this just is like irritating that way that it could happen. And I bet he's like plus 1,200 or something. But that would be the kind of bet rate that would get me excited. A Noah Gray first touchdown of the game.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this as we're talking.
Yeah, it's there. Or
first
any
TD score. Here we go. First TD score. The Niners are favored to have the first score. Where are the players? Oh, Kyle, I'm in the wrong zone, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe up there at the top, you can see it.
Yeah, I'm on first of the game, first to score, but then it's only got the team odds. I don't see any player odds.
Oh, there's some. There's a player first. Is it there?
I don't
player
know.
First. There, like, that's one thing is, it's cool to say, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a lot of bets and a lot of crazy things, but then you got to find them.
First touchdown. Player will score the first touchdown. Here we go. That's just the first, but that's only, it's got Ayuk and Kelsey and McCaffrey. It's got to be somewhere, like you said. It's just, we're not finding it here as we're doing the show.
We'll hunt it down as we go through. So more on the Super Bowl tomorrow. We still got a call out to Jeff Mans. Jeff ignored me yesterday. I don't know if he ignored Ray.
Well, let's just say the odds are less than 50-50.
Oh, man.
He's efforting, as they say. It's not from a lack of trying. There are things going on behind the scenes, family things and such.
Gotcha.
So, but fingers
if
crossed.
We won't have Jeff. We're going to have one of our other experts. I can tell you.
Okay. So we might have to start running that down. I don't
No
know.
worries. Other things in football. First off, George Kittle, for what it's worth, limited yesterday toe injury. I think he's going to be fine. Skyy Moore, Ray, activated off the IR. You got any love for Skyy Moore? We're not going to see. I doubt we see Jerick McKinnon. Is Skyy Moore going to be your unheard of and unexpected Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah, if he is, it'll be. I mean, there's been some improbable performances, right? But that would be right at the top of the list, Kyle. So I'm going to say
and that'd be up there. Was it Dexter Jackson? Was that his name with Tampa Bay? The cornerback that won the Super Bowl MVP all those years ago.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
that was the Tampa, Oakland game. Was it the Oakland Raiders at that point? I think it was. Dexter Jackson, I think was the name there. MVP. And
Super
right
Bowl,
as he was going
Super Bowl 37, you're correct.
Yeah, MVP, never to be heard of again. So maybe we'll get Skyy Moore that way. But anyway, he's been activated off the IR, so there is a chance that we'll see him. Report today, TJ Hawkinson, who, if he were healthy, would be a top 3 or 4 tight end. He's not healthy, ACL, MCL, and Ray, it's early, but already there's the thought that he's maybe not back until October or so.
And by the way, I was able to find Noah Gray's plus 5,500 for the first touchdown.
Ooh, that's fun, Ray. That's fun.
If you want to get crazy, Ray McLeod's 11 plus 11,000, and Michael Pirine is plus 12,000.
You're right though with the Chiefs, Ray. This is a team where you want to get it, like throw $5 on each of those guys,
right? Blake Bell's plus 10,000. Who knows?
Yeah, this is Andy Reid, man. Andy Reid may do you good. Any of those, spread your bets. $5 on this guy, 10 on that, 20 on this guy, and come home happy. I feel good. Right? That may be where I'm going with my favorite prop bets. One of those unnamed, unknown Chiefs scoring the first touchdown of the game.
No touchdown score in the game. What do you think the odds are for that?
Plus 75,000.
It's only 18,000. I thought it'd be higher too. Yeah.
Have we? But that's either side, right?
Yeah. No touchdown scorer.
I mean, remember that snooze fest between the Rams and Patriots a few years back? 13-3, I think, was the final or something. Mm-hmm. And that was mind-blowing, great, because that was supposed to be 2 offenses that would score. That may go down as one of the more disappointing Super Bowls in the history of Super Bowls. Just not that the game wasn't competitive or close, but it was so unlike what we expected. And maybe Vegas got nervous. That game may still stick in their mind that we can actually have a Super Bowl with no touchdowns.
By the way, I totally ignored your question. What was your question?
Hawkinson.
Oh, yeah, Hawkinson. Yeah, he might lose the first month. Might end up on the PUP list or something. That's not shocking given where we're at in the calendar, but it's disappointing to hear because he, obviously, since he joined the Vikings 2 years ago, has been catching 7 passes every week. And so that's something to keep a close eye on, especially for those people in keeper leagues.
And one other bit of news, Rex Ryan, who has not coached in the NFL in 8 years or so. I think 2016 was the last year for Rex Ryan. I think he's floating around. He helps out ESPN, I know, throughout the weeks. But Rex Ryan is supposedly up for the Cowboys D coordinator job. So we shall see. But just letting you know that one of the Ryan boys could be back in the NFL, which, hey, the NFL is always more fun when a Ryan is stalking the sidelines. Done with the football for today, more tomorrow. Obviously, leading up to Super Bowl 58. Let us get into some baseball all this week, talking second baseman. And Ray, Thursday is kind of a gap day here when we talk about a position. We try to find something that kind of, has an appeal to the entire position, a trend, a storyline, whatever it may be within that position. And as I looked at second base for today, and it actually starts right at the top. Starts right at the top with Mookie Betts. This guy who is obviously a Hall of Fame level player, but now you've got Hall of Fame eligibility. And what I mean by that, second base, outfield, infield, outfield. That is rare as is, but to get it from a superstar, we've seen it with years ago, Trey Turner. Was it Trey Turner? Did he have that? No, I
Second
wouldn't.
base, shortstop,
Yeah, well, he had to say, but I'm
outfield.
trying to think who had the infield outfield thing. I mean, Tatis had it recently. But I feel like there was a player also that was on the high end that had the infield outfield thing kind of working for at least a year. And Betts is that guy this season. And it's maybe the best example we've ever had in the last decade or 15 years of a true superstar with that. But Ray, it leads into this entire position. You see Tommy Edman, you see Gavin Lux, Hae-Sung Kim. You can move that guy all over the infield. Brandon Drury has corner and middle. Luis Rengifo, second, third, short, outfield. You go a little deeper here at second base. Brandon Donovan of the Cardinals, infield, outfield. Jeff McNeil of the Mets, infield, outfield. Even a youngster like Jordan Westburg of Baltimore, middle, infield, and corner, third base and second base. But Ray, it's all over this position. It's a spot where late in the draft, not late, but middle to late, you can find guys that, in effect, I don't want to say it's a 2-for-1 player, but it's 1 1/4 player for one. These guys that will help you certainly in daily leagues. Let's talk about a few away from Betts, because obviously he's a superstar in his own kind of orbit. Tommy Edman, let's go with him, Ray. All over the place. Now, this year, we think he's going to be mainly in the outfield. That's the plan. But, Ray, this is a guy who not only gives you infield, outfield, but also gives you shortstop, second base. The guy played everywhere last year. And although he is not a star, he is quite solid. And with that extra eligibility, I think he should become an interest for many, many people out there. Not as your starting second baseman, but, man, you would love to have him as just this guy to shift around in a daily league day in, day out, because he plays. He's always in that lineup, Ray, despite maybe moving around on the defensive side.
Yeah, the problem for Edman is he fooled the Cardinals for a while into putting him toward the top of the order, and now they've realized he should be at the bottom of the order. So even if he's playing a lot, and we saw this reflected last year, he'd scored 90 runs in 2 consecutive years, and last year was down to 69. So that's a little bit of a hit, right? Because he's not a batting average guy, he's not a power guy. He really needs that boost, and he's probably going to be in the bottom third of the order again. So keep that in mind. But to Kyle's point, Tommy Edman's never going to be a ceiling guy. He's a floor guy. And when your floor guy is stealing 25-plus bases, as he's done each of the last 3 years, and, basically being batting average neutral, maybe a little bit better than league average, batting average neutral, and then adding in the flexibility, it's so big because I think that, you hear it now and you like it and it's cool, and maybe you go with Edman in later rounds or maybe you don't. But the real value is the in-season move because, let's say you lose Gleyber Torres at second base and you go and you look at the second baseman and they're crap awful on the waiver wire. Well, you slot Tommy Edman into second base and then you go to the shortstop position where, oh my gosh, Willie Adames is on the waiver wire. Cool. So it allows you to not only manipulate your lineup, a guy like Edman, on a daily basis to make sure you have all your spots covered. It's a huge help when you go to the waiver wire because then you don't have to necessarily focus just on one position. You can look a little bit broader.
And I was going to say, Ray, I don't want Tommy Edman as my starting second baseman or shortstop. I don't want that. I want him as a backup there. A guy can move around. What if I said, there comes that point in the draft and I'm in a 5 outfielder league and I take him as my 4th outfielder, which would make him a starter there. Or maybe even 5th outfielder. But he's not a guy I want as an outfielder. I'm really just drafting him because at that spot, I'm using him as my utility guy. He may be my opening day starting outfielder. Hopefully, I'll find somebody else later that will come about. But, sometimes people will be scared off or a draft will go in a certain way where they already got their middle infielder. And it's like, well, do I need Tommy Edman? Because now I got 2 extra middle infielders. But that idea of, hey, you may not love him as an outfielder, but on draft day, picking him up as an outfielder and then having that ability in season. In other words, you don't have to just say, my middle infield spot is saved for Tommy Edman. Hey, if a better middle infield pops up in round 5, go get that guy.
Right.
But you can still come back to Edman and for the time being, pop him into your outfield and then move him around once the season begins.
Yeah. And again, I think that the growing thought with Edman is that he's kind of just a guy. And you look at his ADP right now at the NFBC since the start of January, it's 166. So, he's in that zone where people are taking him, and it's not like to your point, if he's my starter here or my starter there, and the draft went this way or that way. I don't think he's fallen as low as 232, right? So he's he's in that zone where people look at him and they love the flexibility and the ability to both in season and at the draft build your team differently if the draft goes a certain way. But they also, I think, have come to the realization, like I pointed out, that he's likely to hit at the bottom of the batting order. There's no upside with Tommy Edman. Like, is he going to steal 45 bases? Don't see it. Is he going to hit 290? Don't see it. Is he going to hit 20 home runs? Don't see it. So if you can draft him looking basically at the numbers from last season and understand the value in that, if that's where you're starting, I think you're okay. And it's always worth, in my opinion, when you're talking about a guy who qualifies at least 3 spots, it's always worth bumping the guy around or adding an extra $1 at an auction to have that flexibility. Even if it's not sexy, having that flexibility is really important.
You mentioned his ADP in 160s or so. Mm-hmm. And you also brought up earlier the spot in the batting order. Mm-hmm. If he's at the bottom, Ray, and not every day, well, they'll move him. The Cardinals have always moved him around, but you're right. He's not a leadoff hitter. His stats don't show that. But if he's at the lower end of the order, Ray, the likelihood is that at the top of the order is another guy with positional eligibility, another guy with infield, outfield. It's probably Brendan Donovan. Mm-hmm. Now, Brendan Donovan is 100 and, he's in a 12-team league. He's 10 rounds later than Tommy Edman. But I might be getting a guy leading off for that Cardinals team, or at least, up at the upper end of the order. It's very rare you'd have both Donovan and Edman at the bottom of the order. It's one or the other. So if Edman is that guy, Ray, Brendan Donovan, again, he fits this discussion, multi-positional eligibility, second base and outfield. You get him so much later. That's a guy that may fit better than Tommy Edman, purely driven off the idea that more plate appearances, getting on base in front of Arenado and Goldschmidt and Contreras, that would lead to better overall numbers than a guy like Tommy Edman.
Yeah, Donovan played 14 games at first base as well and 6 games at third base. So there's always a chance in season he picks up another spot. We saw him do that in his rookie season too. He moves all over the place. He is a completely different offensive player than Edman. You look at their ability to get on base, and like you're saying, we 381 on base percentage for Donovan in 2 years is really good. And back in the day, we'd want the speedy guy, Edman, batting leadoff. Now in the analytical thought process, do we want a 310 on base percentage? Do we want a 380 on base percentage? It's huge.
And it's an easy decision when you look at it that way.
Very easy decision, yeah. And especially because we can put Edman down the order, and if he gets caught stealing or whatever, whatever. Donovan's not going to run, right? So the way they produce value is different. That makes Donovan much less sexy. Even I just mentioned that Edman wasn't sexy. Donovan's even less sexy. But if the power stroke he showed last year, which was greatly improved upon his first season in the league, his launch angle went from 6 to 11%. So he made a big change there with the swing path. If that sticks and he's hitting 15, 18 home runs, and he's hitting 1 or 2 in this lineup, and he's scoring 90 runs, now we got something, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think that Donovan, is he sexy or exciting now? At his ADP, can you draft him with his flexibility and the potential of him batting leadoff? I think that's okay to do.
Let's go to the guy whose image is below Edman there, Gavin Lux. And Ray's kind of like the Edman Donovan thing, another Dodger. You get the Betts and Lux thing. One major issue we got with Lux is all of those, qualifications you're seeing there, games played, were not last season. He missed the entirety of the year. And Ray, he was injured in spring training. There was a little bit of interest in him. He was a prospect around your fantasy lineup. He was going to be with the Dodgers, like all that. And then Ray, it went to Kapui. He blew up and then he was done. First off, again, the eligibility carries over almost everywhere. That should be the expectation. But he's not going to be moving around to near this number. We think, Ray, we're looking at the everyday shortstop for the LA Dodgers, right?
That's the current plan. Now the Dodgers obviously could make a move. They've got Miguel Rojas on the bench. They could, maybe Chris Taylor still can play some shortstop if they have to. If something happens and they decide, because the way things are going, they're moving Mookie Betts back to the outfield. Okay, so they're basically, he should be the starting shortstop, Gavin Lux. There are outs for him, even if things go differently, where he could continuation here of the dual position eligibility. Much like Edman, though, he's probably at the bottom of the order, right? 7, 8, 9. Maybe, maybe he moves up, but probably not. They've got a pretty top-heavy lineup to the Dodgers. And I think that, he really, if we're going to look at him and kind of profile him out, he's a potentially better Brandon Donovan, right? He's obviously more of that kind of a hitter, a guy that can get on base, a guy that's not going to run a lot, a guy with some pop. versus a Tommy Edman type whose value is more in his wheels.
And the problem, I guess, with Lux, Ray, and this is and it's a little bit unfair to him, but he started his major league career in 2019. And here we are in 2024, 5 years later. Ray, I still don't really know what he is. I mean, there was very little playing time early on. And then he would get a little more of a chance. And, oh, wow, he flashed for this week. And then he fell off for 2 more weeks after that. And then he'd flash for another week and then 3 weeks of and then last year, nothing. And so this guy, to me, like even Edman and Donovan, to me, have proven themselves more. Gavin Lux, I still don't even know. And again, we're 5 years into this thing, which is kind of crazy, Ray. And, you wonder about rustiness. And if he struggles, Ray, they will go to Rojas. They will make a trade. I don't think they're going to sit there. And if Gavin Lux is batting, 204 on Memorial Day, they're not going to keep rolling him out there. They will bring in Rojas or somebody else from their storied minor league system. That's kind of my fear with Lux. And we're just back around to like, oh, he plays every 3 days, once every 4 days. And that's kind of my fear with him. I've been reading about the talent and what he can do for years now, but it feels like it's just never clicked. And there are certain, he has excuses. Hey, man, I blew my knee out last year. What'd you expect? But I feel like we're expecting more than we have the right to expect, I guess, from him this season.
Well, he's only 26 too, but it has been a bumpy path. And, we don't have a ton of playing time here at the big league level. But another concern is you look at his work against left-handed pitching and it's bad. His OPS is 587. That's bad. And so then you start worrying about, even if he's going well, do the Dodgers platoon him, right? So, yeah, Lux is certainly, there's a background, there's a history, there's scouting reports, and there's tons of minor league success. Like, it's all there. But can he transition that to 500 plate appearances of goodness at the big league level? I am of the opinion he can do it. Am I going to pay on draft day expecting him to do it? I agree with you. I wouldn't do that.
He's in the 260s, 250s right now overall. Ray, I'd rather take Brendan Donovan and wait 30 picks later if that's how the draft's playing out. I'd rather just wait. Neither guy's a guarantee, but right. I think Lux, that jersey helps him a lot here.
No,
Ray, if he had this kind of background on the Twins, nobody's really caring, I don't think.
Well, I'm pulling up ADP with you here. I mean, Luis Rengifo, we talked about, qualifies at 4 spots. He's 30 picks earlier. I'd take him 2 rounds ahead of Gavin Lux. You've got Vaughn Grissom, who we talked about. He's 20 picks ahead of Gavin Lux. I take Vaughn Grissom. So it's, I'll put it this way. I'm more likely to settle for Gavin Lux than I am to target Gavin Lux.
What about Rengifo, Ray? Mm-hmm. Second, third, short, and outfield. I mean, and again, that's not a name that many people can say, oh man, I've watched a dozen at-bats of Luis Rengifo. I love how that guy plays. Nobody's saying that about it. He's with the Angels, and if you're watching the Angels, you're watching Trout and Ohtani. That's what you're on. Rengifo, Ray, is totally lost in the shuffle. And this happens every fantasy years of guys like, you see something like, oh, I should maybe know more about that guy, but nobody does. So, what is he? Because that's a draft pick where literally half your room, Ray, is going to go, who? Why are you taking him there? It is the only, I shouldn't say only, is the biggest argument, the positional eligibility, or is there more there?
I think there's 2. And he is in the hitters to target article over at fantasyguru.com.
So there must be more, huh?
Yeah, well, yes and no, to your point. And I think, the 4 position eligibility is just massive. It's just massively important. I think one of the other big keys, and even this is not even talking about his necessary acumen with the bat. If he qualifies at 4 spots and potentially he's hitting first in the lineup. And if you look at the Angels lineup, like, you can create a scenario where he's hitting first with Mike Trout behind him. Yeah, sign me up. We've seen Cole Calhoun have success there. We've seen Taylor Ward have success there. Not necessarily guys that, oh my gosh, look at their skill set. You hit in front of Mike Trout, whether you believe in lineup protection or not, you're hitting in front of Mike Trout, right? So I think that those 2 factors, the flexibility and the ability to potentially hit leadoff, is really important. I don't know if Rengifo has, he's kind of in that Tommy Edman zone in that he doesn't have a standout skill that says, wow, he's going to hit 300 or hit 28 home runs or steal 20 bases. He doesn't have a standout skill, but if he's playing every day and he's at the top of the order, and he's got that 4-position flexibility, I'm in.
And he will be drafted even in almost all mixed leagues, I think, 250, 270 picks. Lower on the other side, I just wanted to point this guy out for certain for AL only, because this eligibility thing is even more critical in your league-specific setups, where, in effect, you are getting 2 players for the price of 1. But, Ray, if you're in an AL only, Zach McKinstry has got to be on your list, just because he can cover up those weeks where you have your third baseman or a 5th outfielder, whatever it is. But, Ray, he's got the same thing as Rengifo without, I don't want to call it hype. Nobody's hyping Rengifo, but without the cost of Rengifo. So for mixed leagues, I don't know if McKinstry's on there, but Ray, for AL only, that guy's critical. If you're in an AL only league, he should be on your list and a guy you should target.
Yeah, and second base, third base, outfield, shortstop. Kind of like Edman, he's projected to hit in the bottom third of the batting order for a Tigers team that's not overly sexy. So there's that. But that flexibility, yeah, and it totally deserves to be pointed out. If you're in a 10-team mixed league, who cares about Zach McKinstry? If you're in a 12-team mixed league, who cares about Zach McKinstry? 15-team league, I don't think you draft them, but in season, you might end up picking them up off the waiver wire. But if you're in an only league, huge value. So if you're new to AL or NL only leagues, understand that even if you're in a 10-team league, right, it's a smaller league only setup. When you go to the waiver wire, when there's an injury in season, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. And that scenario I mentioned earlier, where maybe you look at the second base position and there's no one on waivers, but you look at shortstop position and there might be one guy in the AL that's playing every day that's on the waiver wire in your league. And if that guy's at shortstop and you need a second baseman, what are you going to do? You got Zach McKinstry. You can combat that. You put him over there. You grab the one guy off the waiver wire. He is a huge play. And it's, again, well worth elevating a round or two and $1 or $2 at the office.
Well, another way of thinking about it, Ray, is when you draft a guy like McKinstry in those league-only setups, it's like you're drafting extra fab. Because now you're not having to spend fab whenever your second baseman gets hurt and you go in there and it's like trash. Like you're looking for 11 at-bats. Right. That's what you may be hoping. McKinstry covers up at all these spots. You don't want to – and here's the thing. Even in league only, you don't want to be stuck, I don't feel, with Zach McKinstry for 6 weeks in your starting lineup.
Right.
But, man, he's a great insurance policy for 2 weeks. At all these different positions, even middle infield, corner infield, like all of this stuff, he can become a critical piece. So always league specific, have that guy in your back pocket. And that is one of those picks in league only where people do scream and yell. They get pissed off because they thought they were going to be the only guy drafting Zach McKinstry. More on second baseman tomorrow. We will talk about prospects coming up on Friday as we wrap up, I guess you would say, that position. Ray, as we go to the Fantasy Guru Baseball Draft Guide, we always like to spotlight an article that is available, and articles are coming out each and every day with that draft guide. And again, you can get it for $40. You see it at the bottom of the screen. Use that promo code FSD20, and what was $50 comes for $40. And it's not just the draft guide, it's the whole season of season long. Got to reiterate that whole season of Ray Flowers at your service. So that's worth more than $40, believe me.
Way more. Yeah.
Way more. Ray would say $4 million is what today, we've been doing a lot of stat discussions over the last couple of weeks. Things that maybe shouldn't be added, things that you can consider adding. Ray, ABA is the topic today, and it's brought to us by you as a replacement for WHIP. So, hey, WHIP, man. I remember back in the day, Ray, whenever you'd tell people about WHIP, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Nobody knew what WHIP. You had to be a fantasy baseball player to know what WHIP was. That was like the cool stat. Like, this isn't really a stat anybody knows about, but if you're a big baseball fan, WHIP. That was the original analytic, Ray.
Yep, absolutely.
And it was simple. Walks, hits, divided by – now you're telling me WHIP's old-fashioned and we need to go ABA.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been years now, and I think when people see it, they love it. It hasn't caught on, which maybe I need a PR firm, because this idea is so much better. It's a whole factor better than WHIP. And basically it's the exact same strategy in terms of figuring out the computation. You can see it there on the screen. Let's go through it real quickly. WHIP tells you walks plus hits divided by innings pitched. WHIP doesn't tell you at all about the type of hit. If you hit a single, a double, triple, home run, it's all the same to WHIP, right? It's you see the example there. Pitcher A allows a hit and a walk in 2 innings. That's 2 base runners in 2 innings. The whip is 1. If there's a hit in the first inning and a walk in the second inning, you have a very good chance of having an ERA of 0 because there's no one on base. What if, though, pitcher B allowed a hit and a walk, so same whip, but the hit was a home run? Then your ERA is at least 4.5. If the walk happened before the home run, your ERA is now 9. So average base allowed is very simple. Instead of saying we're just going to be concerned about hits, we're going to be concerned about total bases allowed, because it's much more valuable to know whether it's been a single or a home run, because it has a greater impact on the pitcher. It tells you more about how the pitcher is performing, right? And as well, we're going to throw in hit by pitch. And I know Kyle mentioned this in his points league. They have it. And it's numbers, he has hit 7 guys in a course of season. It's not a big number. But if we're talking about pitchers putting guys on base with the walk, why aren't we talking about putting them on base with a hit by pitch? So it's total bases plus walks plus hit by pitch divided by innings pitched.
And I don't think hitters do not get a total base for an error, do they? They don't get like
no. You have to hit it.
So
with
errors wouldn't matter here. If an error happens behind a pitcher, you don't get, it's not a total base that is against him. The other aspect, Ray, is ABA is kind of a 2-for-1 stat. Kind of. Right now, whip and ERA together kind of build this, but it's 2 categories. This would get rid of 2 categories, add 1, and then allow you to add a new 5th. So for people who are really interested in kind of changing up the usual, your typical 5x5, and you think, oh, this is a way, Ray, to kind of eliminate 2 stats and bring in ABA to cover both, and then still do other things, with your statistical categories. Numbers wise, because this is always critical, we talked about this with SWIP. What's a good number? We know what a good number is in whip, 1, 2 or lower, even 1, 2, 5, but 1, 2 or lower. Do we know what that number is for ABA?
Yeah. And it's in the article over at fantasyguru.com. It's a big article with charts and tables and history. And I've tracked this for about a decade now. In fact, I'm looking at, there's a decade of data in the article. And the league average last year was 2. Okay. Year before it was 1.9. Year before it was 1.98. So we're basically talking 2. Now I have a key in there so that you can read it, because the number is different. And you could try to normalize this. And here's my thing. I could normalize this. So we multiply ABA by 0.68296784.
Yeah.
And no one understands that. So I'm just keeping it simple. We just need to learn the new classifications. The league average, again, is about 2. So obviously you want a number that's, that mark or smaller. When you're an elite performer, you're in the 1.6 range. So it's kind of like whip. Like whip, we have about a 3/10 difference. I think in ABA we got about 4/10 difference.
Is there a name? And I know this stuff's probably in the column, so I don't want to spoil it for. But is there a name out there, Ray, that their whip was not bad, but their whip was kind of low, but their ABA was better? I mean, are these things correlated? If in effect, if I have a really good whip, do I have a really good ABA? I'm guessing in most aspects you do, but there's probably at least a few names that differ from the norm.
There are. And the reason for that is there, and I mentioned this too, I'm very upfront about this. There's a weakness to ABA, and that is that ground ball pitchers aren't necessarily favored here, right? Because the ground ball pitcher oftentimes gives up a lot of hits, but they're the home run guys are a lot of the home run guys are strikeout guys. Guys like Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole, they give up a bunch of home runs, but they have all these zeros because they're wiping everyone out with strikeouts. So there is a little bit of a lean toward the power arms here. Yeah. But I would think that just looking at this quickly, and he's the picture up here, it's not that last year Kota Sengai had a bad whip. It was 1.22. That's a solid. You mentioned it's solid. We'll go with that. But he's like 9th in ABA. He wasn't 9th in whip. So there are players like that through, and again, they're highlighted in the article. Another guy that grades out pretty well last year, Sandy Alcantara, who's not pitching this year because of injury. He was a disappointment. So yeah. And I think the article does hopefully a good job of pointing out some fellas. Marcus Stroman, another one. So there are some names there that people can probably pull out when they're looking at the lists.
Average bases allowed. Ray Flowers with a write-up on that, amongst many write-ups with kind of newfangled stats or opinions on old stats and why we should get rid of them. Something you don't get in a lot of draft guides, but Ray does a wonderful job of letting you think and letting you, if you're in a league that is progressive and looking to get better, if you will, or to value players more correctly. Some of these things that Ray is writing about certainly can help you do that. In closing, a couple of news and notes items. For what it is worth, Vlad Jr. won his arbitration, and the two sides were way off. Vlad won in 19.9. Blue Jays were offering 18.1. The arbitrator he's got to do one or the other. Mm-hmm. And Ray comes out on Vlad's side. That's a big number, almost $20 million in arbitration. I guess that's where we're at in today's day and age.
Which means he's going to get $27 million next year, right? Because he's got one more year of arbitration. The Blue Jays have built a strong core, a nucleus of younger players. They have very strict guidelines when it comes to paying. Mm-hmm. I think Vlad's gone. The way this is going, like we're hearing, they're not even talking about an extension now.
If their team, Ray, gets off, if it's July and, oh, man, the Orioles are the Orioles, the Rays are the Rays, the Yankees are bad. If it's bad for the Blue Jays, here's like trade bait, baby. With a year left on his contract and that Toronto is probably thinking about that right now. Surely I know they don't want to be 15 games out at the All-Star break, but if it were to fall apart, Ray, I mean, that guy is going to be one of the top gets you could have at the trade deadline.
Absolutely. And he'll be 25 years old next month.
Yeah.
So, he's going to want $350 million, $400 million. That's what he's going to want. And it's coming, man. And the salary with the arbitration, it's going there anyway, naturally. So that's what he's going to want. It doesn't seem like the Jays at the moment, at least, are willing to pay that.
Speaking of paying guys, the Mets, I think it was their GM maybe coming out. David Stearns, a new guy, came out today and said, we're not going to probably get a deal done with Pete Alonso before this year. We'd love to have him. We'd love to extend him. But, Ray, they're almost kind of just pot committed to the idea of let it go to the offseason. And if it's one of those things, Ray, if you get the free agency, you're gone. Maybe not. Maybe Alonso's a New York guy and sticks around. But the Mets, who we've been told have all kinds of money, that's all we've been told now for the last 3 years, seem to be playing a lot of hardball with a guy who hits 45 home runs every year. Let's give money to all these other clowns, but the guy who's actually done it and has become a fan favorite, he's got to prove it to us, I guess.
One of the 5 best power hitters in baseball. We don't need that. No. And like you said, people like Pete Alonso. This is not like, some guy who's out at the club punching people in the middle of the night. So there's some weird things going on with the Mets. I mean, Adam Ottavino basically said he waited to go back to the Mets because he wasn't sure what direction they were going to go. It's like, wait, what? I thought your guy.
Well, and Ray, that's it. Like last year, it was all in. Wow, look at the Mets. They're spending all this money. And now, I don't want to criticize the decision because, sometimes you just spend money, and it's spending after a lost cause. You're chasing bad money with more bad money. So I get it, but this was supposed to be, well, who the hell cares? We're committing to being a big spender. And now it's like, ooh, that first year, they got a real punch in the jaw, and that totally weakened them. Like the fact that they were like gung-ho, we're going to do this for decades. We're a spender. We're the Yankees. That's how we're going to spend. And it didn't work out for 1 year, and now they're reassessing everything. That's what's kind of comical about the whole situation.
And look at their current starting rotation. Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, Adrian Hauser. Seriously? Like, that's not good.
Kodai Senga, throw him in there.
Yeah, Kodai Senga, but the rest of these guys, Quintana's 35, Severino, who the hell knows what he's got to offer. Sean Manaea, all over the place in performance and role. And Adrian Hauser, come on, man. So this is where are they spending the money? Even when they're spending it, the Pete Alonso thing is very weird. Yeah. Unless maybe he just doesn't want to be there. I haven't seen a report suggesting that. So
I guess the arguments, Ray, is, hey man, if I pop another 45 home runs, I'm worth $35 million a year.
Probably.
I mean, he doesn't have the defensive ass. He's not a bad defender or anything, but I guess first basemen are always, Ray, it's like, oh, you're just a big oof. Right. You're not exciting like Betts,
right?
Or like Ohtani. You're not the Julio Rodriguez racing around. You're just an oaf. So that's how and maybe that's the.
Remember too, second round pick in 2016. He's been with this organization for almost a decade too. It's just weird. I don't know.
Gary Sanchez has a home joining Milwaukee, 1 year, $7 million. Milwaukee's retooling. I love that deal. I mean, why the hell not? Gary Sanchez could actually do something. I love the DH in the NL. That gives jobs to guys like Gary Sanchez, and it gives Milwaukee a cheap route. It was not, Ray, he's okay. He's never going to be the superstar that everybody wanted him to be, but he's fine. I mean, he ended up better than, Joey Bart, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting, the signing, and I get it. It makes sense. It's short term. It's not that expensive. It's a little, because don't you want to leave the DH spot open for Christian Yelich? I mean, he's had back woes, and you want to keep him in the lineup. And so now things get tight because they got William Contreras, excuse me. They signed Rhys Hoskins, right? Yeah. So now it's like, how much is Gary Sanchez going to play? Is he playing 3 or 4 times a week? Yeah. Are we out on Garrett?
I think that's what it is, right? It's 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. I mean, are they out on Garrett Mitchell in the outfield? Are they just like, well, this guy, I know he's only 25 years old, but he's just not the answer? Because they've got Frelick, they've got Churio, they've got Yelich. Like, their outfield seems full. So I think it's a good baseball signing. Mm-hmm. And he's, as a second catcher, he can play 3 or 4 days a week and hit 18 home runs, right? So it's fine. But it's just, a little uneasy if you're looking at some of those young players with the Brewers.
Let's pull the curtain down on this edition of Fantasy Sports Daily. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow, focusing a lot on the Super Bowl, both the game itself, but also the wagering aspect. Do want to promote that betting guide that is out at fantasyguru.com. I know a lot of people is like Thursday, unless you're like hardcore, if you're hardcore, you've been placing wagers and stuff for 3, 4 to 5 days, if not longer. But for those who just kind of, I get to the weekend and Friday and Saturday, I'm going to look at this stuff and I'm going to go to the, to my app or to my local casino and start getting it. You want to have the wagering guide with you that we produce here at Fantasy Guru. So make sure you have that. If you can't get it, as part of your subscription, sign up for it. Was it $20, Ray? Is that right? Yeah, $20.
Yeah, and Jeff Mans was yelling on. He's like, "What are we doing?" Like he was saying, "Who's making these price decisions?" And there's a little bit of salesmanship there, but it's the same idea. We normally sell the Super Bowl betting guide for $19.99. We're giving you seasonal. We're giving you all the wagering. We're giving you DFS, and we're giving you franchise mode. Like we're giving you months of coverage here for $19.99. So yeah, absolutely, $19.99. You see it at the bottom of the screen.
Okay, that'll do it for us, Ray. Good stuff today. Tomorrow we'll back with football, baseball. Might sneak in a little soccer if we can find the time. But enjoyed it. We'll talk Friday, okay?
Looking forward to it, Kyle.
Big thanks to everybody out there. Kyle Elfrink here. Ray Flowers over there. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.